So we're here with the fantastic songwriter Barry Jones. It's a real pleasure for me to sit down and talk to you about some of your songs.
Well, thanks for asking me. It's nice to
Yeah,
have someone show some interest. Thank you.
yeah. Well, I'd mentioned since I'd started coming here that you often steal the show.
I'm sure that's just your opinion, Kieran, but thank you anyway. But,
I really mean it, because there's some fantastic songwriters that come here. But your songs always resonated with me in a way. Now I'm going to apologise in advance for this question.
Okay.
But once I've thought about it, I thought I had to ask you.
Yes,
now,
okay.
Your song, Hide the Sausage.
Yes.
There's a line in that song
Yes.
that I think about often is, and for my conjugal rights,
Yes.
which used to be twice nightly,
Yes.
I find myself indefinitely banished.
Yes. Yes.
Twice nightly.
Yeah. Twice nightly.
Is it fair to say that the protagonist in this song is familiar with hiding the sausage?
Oh yeah, I would say I would say so. I mean, some of the stuff which comes up in that is related to other things. I suppose that maybe that's the same with a lot of songwriters. I don't know, but I watch Countdown. And the original presenter of Countdown was Richard Whiteley, and someone had actually said one time, I really can't remember who, it was twice nightly Whiteley. So it was one of those things which I thought I'd bring into the song. Really, it was. There's other things. There's like the old Liverpool joke about working for Cunard.
Right.
Which, if said correctly, sounds like swearing, and from a time when swearing wasn't really as widespread as it is now.
Right.
Granted that I'm doing quite a bit to help that myself. But,
Yeah. Well, that is the song. Really, people love it. And there's a lot of humorous lines in the song, like this twice nightly song. Or I've noticed, because I've seen you play this song a few times now, and there's certain spoken parts, like there's more, which is, it's obviously premeditated, that that you're going to hit these beats in the song.
Yeah, again, that comes. There's a comedian, I can't remember what his name is, but was it Jimmy Cricket? Maybe Jimmy Cricket. Wait, there's more. It was his catchphrase, So, I mean, I suppose it's just there might be an element of plagiarism. I'd like to think it's homage. I don't deny that those things are there. So,
right. And then there's even a moment in the song where the protagonist's wife is talking to the chip shop owner to reassure him that you're an easygoing fella, and then there's a face that you pull.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
And that's all part of the performance, right?
Well, yeah, I suppose anything. It's like it is a performance. It's like, I mean, I reckon that I've played it 600 times or more. I must have played it 400 times at the Cavern Pub, and it is a performance. To me, it's a bit like telling the same joke 400 times and still getting a laugh. So there is a performance element in it. So
well, as time has developed, has it evolved at all, or these little moments have become solidified as you've kind of mastered the art of singing that song?
It was pretty much, well, I mean, I say mastered the art. I mean, I suppose it's just that, it's like any sort of muscle memory. You get used to doing a song in a particular way. That's not to say that there are times when I can't forget what I'm up to, but that comes with so much familiarity as well, unfortunately. But no, I think that it started out that way. I mean, the one video which has had most plays is a video which was taken fairly early on, 10 years ago, in Heebie-Jeebies on a Saturday afternoon. And in that, there isn't actually room for the audience to do, but each time now, even if I do it for the first time somewhere, I always go into the letting the audience
Right,
sing
now
it,
it's your turn, right?
Yeah,
And now all
that's
together.
right. That's right. And like they have their own turn, and so that becomes part of it. On the recorded version of the song, obviously that isn't there because there's no audience,
Right. Yeah.
But only in the last week, I've put a version of it on Bandcamp from when I was supporting Ian Prowse in Leeds, and so I mean, it's a solo version. It's not the South Band, Attic Band. It's just me, but in that, it's got crowds singing along, and it gives them the opportunity to sing. So it's like a live version of the song, which is probably what it should always have been. The last 10 years, I've been getting away with a pre-recorded version.
Yeah. Well, at one point, I think you'd mentioned something about. I think the way you'd phrased it was like, because if you have a song that resonates with people, that's great, but you don't want it to define you as a performer, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. But well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there are people who like my other songs as well, and there are people who say to me, oh well, I love that, but I like these other songs better, which is great, But it would be wrong to complain about having a song that resonates with so many people. It's like. I'm very fortunate that it does, and if I had others that were like it, I would be delighted. But to have a song that I can play, every week for 11 years in what I consider to be the best open mic in the world,
right?
Like fight me for that. But to me, it is like the most famous street in the world, the most famous club name in the world. So
yeah.
To do original songs there and have people enjoy it each week,
right?
Is a privilege.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't complain about it all. Not whether it defines me or not. I'm more than happy people call me Barry Sausage or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. Is you're like, what? Something I'd mentioned about these other songs that really have resonated with me. As I say, I'd met you first here and heard your other songs, because you don't often play it here.
No, that's right,
So I'd come to know you for these other, personal, introspective kind of, maybe even somber songs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and then you'd said something to the effect of, well, I'm not just Barry Sausage, right? Yeah. You have another song, which is in a similar vein, which is the FNL, Not Him Again.
The Rhyme of the Open Micer.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, had that been written at a similar time period?
No, not at all, really. There's a different story to that altogether. In that, I've never set out to do another song like Hide the Sausage. I think that would be the wrong thing to do. And also, writing songs, I don't often have a thing in my head how the song's going to turn out. But I went up to, it's a true story, and I'd been on holiday, and it is a true story, what the man said, not the stuff about the choice of songs which he would rather have. That was just something which I chose to illustrate, because normally people say, can you play Wonderwall? Or in
Brown-Eyed Girl.
Brown-Eyed Girl. Or in Liverpool, got any Floyd, mate? It's like these are sort of the standard lines. But I actually had gone up to the Isle of Mull. I used to go diving at one time, and I'd been diving up the Isle of Mull many years ago, and I always thought I'd go back. And so I went on a bit of a journey to go to the Isle of Mull and to Iona, and I took a guitar, and I thought, well, I'll write some songs. And that's the only song that I came back with from there, which is like, you think in terms of Iona as being a very spiritual place. But that's the song that I came back with. And I was quite happy to come back with the song. So, but it is based on a true story. And hopefully it's self-deprecating in as much as, you shouldn't take yourself too seriously anyway.
Right.
People often do. And I'm guilty of that as anybody, but things will bring you back down to earth, so you may as well make a song out of it.
Yeah. Another song of yours which resonates with me on a deeper level. We both have written songs about our mother. After they passed away.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what I really want to ask you is, was there any apprehension or fear about the song, the quality of the song, not living up to your feelings towards?
Well, I don't know. Maybe, I mean, it's slightly different in that I wrote the song for my mother while she was still alive, but but she was deaf and blind at that stage, and so she couldn't travel. So I did write the song for her, and she did hear it.
Oh, really? How did she?
I mean, she was deaf, but she could. Yeah. I mean, the thing about people don't understand about deafness, really, even and blindness, is she had something like 15% hearing in one ear.
It's a scale.
There's like a. So she can hear certain things, and she can hear with her
hearing aids and the loops
and all of that sort of stuff.
Right.
So she was able to hear it, and the only thing she said was, in the song, I say that she was listening to some Daniel O'Donnell song,
Right.
And
she loves him best of all.
That's right. And she said, I don't love him best of all. She said, I like Willie Nelson better. Right. So, and that was basically all she said, and I said, well, poetic license, bearing in mind that she had about 20 Daniel O'Donnell CDs, so
right.
I think she was maybe protesting a bit too much. But I mean, I don't know what I was expecting from her. I really don't know, but she did get to hear it,
Yeah. Well, was there a sense of catharsis, or how did I mean, it's an odd.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, because I remember the song that you wrote about your mum, and I found it very moving when I heard it, and I still recall it. For me, it was a slightly different thing in that I wrote this song about my mum, particularly because there were things which, things which she said. I mean, I talk about. In the song, I call it the Lost Isle of Innisfree, but it's actually the Lake Isle of Innisfree. You sort of remember things differently. But she had the poem in a frame on the wall. She had an electric fire, and it had a log effect type thing on it. And she said it reminded her of the burning turf. When she was a kid.
I mean, these lines. It's what I wanted to. I'm glad you mentioned that. There's a sense of those lines really place you in the the sense of empathy and like a sensory kind of what you saying here, going deaf and blind.
Yeah.
But then you're in the first few lines of the song, you're referencing the glow of the electric fire, or the sound of the radio, and it kind of really grounds you in like trying to empathize and see the world through.
Well, I'm glad you've noticed that. I mean, because it's one of the things which I try and do within the songs. I don't know whether people think that, songwriting can be very glib, but it's not for me. I mean, the actual end result can sound sort of glib and throwaway, but a lot of it's studied. I do think about it, and one of the things I think in all of these things, when you're writing a song about that, is to try and give an aura of something, so you explain something in a particular way, and you can talk about a smell, because if you can talk about a smell, people's brains can sometimes conjure that smell for them. So,
it's incredibly evocative for me listening to some of your songs to have this, because we experience the world through our senses.
Absolutely.
So the touch of something, the smell, the taste. The sight of something, I get like goosebumps when I hear that song, and it's through these kind of
lovely.
sensory.
I'm delighted,
Yeah,
I am delighted.
I genuinely believe, like I mean it. Like the you've got a way of really like placing somebody in a scene through your lyrics.
Well, that's I would love I love that to be true, So I mean, the fact that you think that is terrific for me. So so thank you. I mean, it's funny. I had this conversation with someone. This will sound a bit daft, really, because I don't really compare myself to people like Tom Waits, who I absolutely adore, as a songwriter and as a performer, because he does a lot more than just write songs. It's like even the things that and the sounds that he records with, But I use a particular example if I'm talking to somebody, and the example is in one of his songs. He says, "With her charcoal eyes and her Monroe hips." Right. Now, to me, in those sort of few words, immediately an image occurs to people. Occurs to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's fantastic. So if I could get anywhere close to something like that, I'd really think I'd done something special. And it is that type of thing. Like, in order to be able to conjure an image for people in as few words as you possibly can, is what I would try and do within a song. And hence, the glow of the electric fire and the burning turf. There's smells in there as well as a sight. So
yeah,
I mean, I like the lines when I've done them, but it's up to anybody else to judge whether they're any good. Not me. But I'm happy with them.
Well, just sticking up. One other question about this song. I've noticed, and you can tell me if it's true or not, that when you sing this song, do I detect a hint of an Irish accent in the way you sing some of the phrases?
That's entirely possible. I mean, I do try as much as I possibly can to sing in my own accent. I don't like to adopt, as some people do, a sort of a mid-Atlantic or an American drawl when doing songs, even if I was doing a cover.
Right.
I try to do them in my own accent. But some of the places that I mention are places that my mum has mentioned to me in the past.
You've heard
with her Irish accent,
right?
So if that comes across in terms of how I might pronounce them,
maybe
then that's the way it is.
Yeah,
I would think so. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, really. It's not. It's seen as being impolite these days to imitate people's accents. It's like it's certainly it's non-PC, and yet there are elements about people's accents that are, particularly, say, the Irish accent, which is so lyrical and what have you, which is nice to hear the sound of it.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you were trying to speak French, for instance, you try and speak French with as much of a French accent as you can.
Right.
And by the same token, if you're going to say Irish places, then maybe say them in the same way the Irish people would. That's my excuse.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I think the first song I ever heard you play was The Lone Crow.
Oh, yes.
And there's a moment in that song where you hold a note for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And I was very curious about, had you ever gotten faint-headed, or is there a specific measure that you try to sing it for?
Well, there's a particular measure that I try to sing it for, but it can go on longer or shorter. But it's like a lot of things in music. You can't just stop it at any point. So it's like, it needs to go on for another 4 beats, for instance. So you've got to reach the point where, it's not going to fade away too much before that point. Again, it's part of there's an element of sort of showmanship in it in order to hold that note, because it's a bit different. It's like something that people maybe aren't expecting.
Right.
But I don't know. I've always from the word go, I've done it that way. Do you know what I mean? So, however it happened when it first arose, that's how it is when I play it.
Yeah.
So.
And then some of the lyrics from that song, like, there's the whole magpie,
one for sorrow, two for joy,
three for a girl, four for a boy.
Absolutely.
And there's lines in the song where it's like, I think the first line that jumped out to me when I first seen you play was the secrets.
Or tales you tell to one
person at a time.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful line. That.
I think it's a good line, in as much as it was something that I heard. It's like it wasn't part of a song, but it was like a quote.
Yeah.
Secrets are. I don't think it was worded quite the same. I think I worded it in order to fit it into the meter of the song. But it's the key to the song, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, part of being like, a songwriter, a poet, or a wordsmith is knowing how to find them. If someone says something to you, like that would be a good lyric, right? Do you find that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would write them down. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
There's another song of my own which I probably embarrassed myself by not being able to remember. But I wrote a song about John Lennon, which is from the perspective of Bob Dylan. And the line is something like, if I'm not singing it, I can never remember that, And it's a line that I got from somewhere else, which is the only peace we have in our time is when they're reloading their guns, which I thought was like, quite a cool line, really, And so I thought it was relevant to this particular time. So it was talking about peace and violence and what have you. So I do search those things. When I say search them out, if you see them or you hear them,
if you come across them,
then I write them down and I think maybe that I can use that in some time.
Right.
I mean, I don't know whether people think of that as being again plagiarism or not. I think it's the sentiment that I'm going for rather than the particular words.
Right. And then in that song, I mean, crows, magpies, a lot of these black birds.
There's lots of birds.
There's a lot of like associative kind of, cues in the song that you've kind of tied them all together into the subtext.
That was the intention. There's like not so much chiff only chaff, because chiff chaffs are a bird, and there's
right.
I've got preacher birds at the end, and yes, I do because it's based around the magpie, one for sorrow, two for joy thing, which I borrow from as well. So and also there's that sort of things. I mean, if you are interested in words, those words like collective nouns, like an exaltation of larks and those type of things. One of them is a charmless charm of magpies. That's the one I was looking for. There's a charm of magpies. Can be a charm of lots of other things as well. Sometimes they refer to other birds rather than rather than one. But I like the idea of the charmless charm of magpies because people don't like them in a lot of cases.
Right.
So those are little sort of slightly alliterative type things which when I'm writing songs, sort of amuse me. So yeah. I mean, whether anybody else noticed them. I mean, if you've noticed some, so I'm delighted. But whether anybody else does is another matter. But I put them in there on purpose. I don't put them in there by chance. Sounds very pretentious, that, doesn't it? But I do, I do try and find things that might be slightly different.
Yeah. So another song I'd like to ask you about is the Ballad of George and Maud.
Yeah.
In the past, I think you've highlighted that as a song that you're quite proud of in your collection.
No, I am,
and could you talk about the names that you chose and why?
Yeah, well, it goes back to what you were saying before, like about doing songs about my mum. I mean, I did a song about my dad as well. It was on an album. I've never played it out anywhere, but it was part of a poem as well, which I submitted to a competition. I don't like competitions, but the thing about George and Maud is that it was based on a piece of artwork, which was the thing to do with the football goal painted on the wall. But George and Maud were actually my father's parents, so my grandparents on my father's side, and they don't get mentioned in the song. It's not actually about them. It was just that I wanted to use names which were of that sort of era. Mm. As it happens these days, little girls are called Maud, and and certainly people are called George. But I suppose certain names evoke certain eras, and it changes over time. But I know somebody now who is a little girl's called Elsie, for instance. But Elsie, when I was a young man, was a name from probably the 1910s and 1920s, But they come round,
And like now, maybe like a name like Barbara or Margaret are considered to be from a different...
Slightly older fashioned, but, as such then, they become people use them because they're slightly unusual,
Right.
and also, once you associate them with a particular person, then that's what they become. But because names are funny, I don't think you get many Barrys these days, or we've had this conversation, Garys or Terrys, we've had this before.
Yeah. Well, just touching on that, just by chance, I ended up picking up some footage of a pretty significant week in your life, completely by chance.
Yeah.
I feel quite, there was just an element of fortune to that, in that when I went to the Monday Club on that particular day, I'd ran into John Lindsay on the bus on the way there. And I said to him, this is my first time going to the Monday Club. And he said, well, you've picked a week for it. Looking back on that and reflecting, do you feel, we've talked about the end of the Southbound Attic Band and the passing of your bandmate. Do you feel like that was a real definitive closing of a chapter?
Yes and no. I mean, it's funny that over the time since then, I've realised that I can't get away from the Southbound Attic Band thing. I have changed my business cards, for instance, because I was given business cards out which were just had Ronnie and I on them, and I found that I was given a business card out and having to say to somebody, but the other fella's died, which seemed like a dreadful way of introducing myself to people.
Yeah, that's the worst first impression.
I didn't set out to do that. It's just that someone said to me, which are you? And I said, well, I'm Barry, but Ronnie's passed away, unfortunately. And then, the idea of crossing them out of the business cards didn't seem to work, so I've changed them. But I've still got the website is still going because I'm not in a position to change that, really. And I've got a gig for Alan O'Hare, supporting Only Child at Thornton Hough, and that's now being billed as Barry Jones with Southbound Attic Band in brackets. And these might seem very small things to people, but in terms of dealing with the passing of a bandmate, these are, which has never happened as such to me before. This is like all a learning experience. It's like, these are the way things are, So it's a bit like, I feel like, we go again. It's that, get on with it, and keep doing what you do,
Right. You've briefly mentioned Bandcamp, SoundCloud. Now, that's one thing I think's interesting, is that you've kind of took a bit of a moral stance in how you make your songs available.
Yeah, well, it's partly a moral stance and partly laziness. I don't really agree with the way Spotify is, and I don't honestly think that with my songs that Spotify is the route to people hearing them. So I've had songs on SoundCloud for free download for some years, and SoundCloud doesn't really attract. I don't know how you say it. It doesn't attract passing trade, I don't think. It's like you probably need to be on Spotify, to be on playlists and what have you, to have people do that. But I hadn't done that. And so I am on Bandcamp so that people can buy stuff or they can stream stuff. And that's been okay. But I don't really particularly want to push the commerciality of what I do anyway. It would be nice, I think, to be more popular, but it's not the be all and end all, So,
right.
But there is an element of laziness in it because I don't really want to start doing all of those things. I mean, I will put stuff up on Bandcamp, but I don't really want to get involved with like other people putting stuff up on Spotify for me or on these other channels. I don't use Spotify that much myself. So.
Right. Well, it's funny because I'd started this playlist series where I'm saying, here's songs for your Spotify playlist.
Yeah.
And then once I'd come to putting different people's names down, I looked for your songs and I found that they weren't there. Yeah. And then I think it's interesting. I mean, it might be in some case is like a generational thing where, you know, certain people from a certain kind of, you know, so like baby boomers might use iTunes rather than Spotify, whereas young children might be kind of pushed in this or that direction.
I use Amazon Music when I use that, so I do use that, you know. So, but I don't. No, I suppose. Yeah, it's not like I'm sticking it to the man or anything like that, you know, because my contributions are very, very small compared to a lot of these people. I do use YouTube. You know, I use YouTube probably more than anything else. You know, personally, I listen to YouTube. I listen to music on YouTube, and quite often it's playlists that are selected for me from things that I've played before. You know, but I'm happy enough with that. You know, it would be nice if my stuff was being played on other people's playlists, but you know, I really don't know. I've been doing this for quite a long time now, and I'm not sure it's going to make a massive amount of difference to me. You know, so I don't know how the algorithms work. You know,
it's a game. So, I ask some of the people who I've been speaking to. I asked them about like I'd been talking to Ben Whitley, who says a lot of his songs, they're not necessarily personal experiences that he's been through, but they're just stories that he's made up.
Yeah.
Whereas John Witherspoon's very much, there's a real truth and centre to his songs. Now, some of your songs may fall in one or the other category, right? Some of them may be very personal, but then say Last Man Standing, I don't believe you were in the American Civil War.
No, I didn't write the lyrics either.
Oh, really?
No, I mentioned earlier on the guy who gave me a set of lyrics to record. They were one of the songs which I recorded for that particular project. I did about 15 songs, and that's the only one that I keep in the set. I mean, I'm sure that accurately, you know, it's accurate historically. I like the song. Apart from anything else, it's popular, but it's not my own lyric. But I mean, I've got plenty of songs which are not autobiographical. You know, I mean, I've got some which are, but I would like to think that they weren't immediately recognizable as being autobiographical anyway. You know?
Right.
I mean, you know, it all depends on what you're doing. I mean, it's like poetic license in song. You know, it's about you know. I mean, it's not as if. I mean, I think that they say that people's like a novelist's first novel is an autobiography, you know. But I don't know. I'm past my first song, so I've got quite a lot of songs which and also, I mean, there's things like where I've done them as a sort of a job of work, like the Willow Suite, you know, which is.
I wanted to ask you about that as well.
You know, it's like basically it's based around the book, but there are elements in it. That are personal to me as well, you know, but it's just like imposing yourself into that particular scenario, you know. So.
Right. When you're writing, do the words come first?
It's a sort of it's an iterative type process by and large. More often than not, there will be words first, but then once I start working on them, the tune. Can change it, you know, and like something I've written as supposedly as a verse might become a chorus, and so you know the tune might change then anyway, you know. So there's a different approach really, you know, each time. I mean, I'm still writing at the moment, but not so much. I haven't written anything since Ronnie died, but it'll come, you know, I'm sure.
Brilliant. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
No, that's been absolutely lovely. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking such an interest.
Yeah, no, and I really mean it when I say that your songs really resonate with me, and you kind of stand above a lot of other performers in that, you know, there's a real kind of emotional kind of weight to the words and the way you know. Some harmonica parts are just really, every time it seems when I see you play, something else will just you know, when I go home, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about the songs that you write.
That's brilliant. That's really nice to hear. You know, makes it worthwhile. That's the reward that you get is somebody saying something like that. So thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for speaking to me.
Thank you.
Okay.